The emergency broadcast cut through the peaceful morning air on Earth like a knife through silk. Admiral Sarah Chen was enjoying her first cup of coffee in 3 days when the priority alert screamed across every communication device in the Sol System Defense Command. This is Emergency Beacon Zeta 779 broadcasting on all frequencies. Galactic Coalition Vessel Harmony's Edge under attack by unknown hostile forces. Colony ship carrying 2 million civilian refugees from the Andromeda border wars. Requesting immediate assistance from any friendly vessels in range. Our shields are failing. Repeat, we are carrying 2 million non-combatant refugees and require immediate assistance. The voice crackled with static, but the desperation was clear. Chen set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. In her 30 years of military service, she had never heard such raw fear in a distress call. "Sir," called Lieutenant Morrison from across the command center, his young face pale with shock. "The signal is coming from the edge of our solar system. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures." Chen moved to the central holographic display, where a three-dimensional map of their solar system flickered to life. At the very edge, near Pluto's orbit, a cluster of red dots appeared. The computer was analyzing the energy readings, and the numbers made her heart skip a beat. "How many ships are we looking at, Morrison?" "Computer estimates between 15 and 20 vessels, Admiral. The largest appears to be roughly 5 kilometers in length, but, sir, there's something else." The young officer's fingers danced across his console, and the display zoomed in on one particular energy signature. It pulsed with a sickly green light that seemed to hurt the eyes just looking at it. "That signature doesn't match any known technology in our databases. It's not human, and it's not from any of the species we've made contact with through the Galactic Coalition." Admiral Chen studied the display with growing unease. Earth had been part of the Galactic Coalition for only 5 years, ever since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel. They were still considered newcomers, barely trusted with basic trade agreements. Most coalition species viewed humans as violent primitives who had somehow stumbled onto advanced technology. "Morrison, get me President Hayes on the secure line, and start calculating jump coordinates for the entire fleet." "The entire fleet, sir? But our standing orders from the Coalition Council are clear. Earth vessels are restricted to patrol duties within the Sol system only." Chen turned to face her young officer, her steel-gray eyes reflecting decades of hard-won experience. "Lieutenant, there are 2 million innocent people about to die out there. I don't care what some bureaucrats in fancy council chambers think about human capabilities." The secure communication link activated, and President Hayes's weathered face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Chen could see the familiar surroundings of the Oval Office. "Admiral Chen, I assume you've received the distress call?" "Yes, Mr. President." "I'm requesting permission to deploy the full Earth Defense Fleet to assist the Coalition vessel." Hayes was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on his desk. "Sarah, you know what this could mean. If we deploy our entire fleet without Coalition approval, it could be seen as an act of aggression. We've worked too hard to build these diplomatic relationships." "Mr. President, with respect, those diplomatic relationships won't mean anything if we let 2 million people die when we had the power to help them." On the main tactical display, the red dots representing the attacking ships had moved closer to the blue dot marking the Coalition vessel. Energy readings spiked as weapons fire began to intensify. "Admiral," Morrison called out urgently, "the Coalition ship's shields are down to 30%. At this rate, they have maybe 20 minutes before complete failure." Hayes leaned forward in his chair. "How long would it take our fleet to reach them?" 18 minutes at maximum burn, sir, but only if we leave right now." The president was quiet again, and Chen could almost see the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Earth's relationship with the galaxy was fragile. One wrong move could isolate humanity forever. But then another voice cut through the communication channel. It was the same voice from the distress call, but weaker now, more desperate. This is Captain Vextar of the Harmony's Edge. Our shields are critical. These attackers, they're not interested in capture or negotiation. They're systematically destroying escape pods. They're murdering civilians for the sake of killing. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. The channel went silent for several seconds before a new sound emerged. It was faint at first, but grew louder. Children crying. Thousands of them. President Hayes closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, Chen saw the same determination that had made him a respected leader. Admiral Chen, you have full authorization to deploy the Earth Defense Fleet. Bring our people home safely. Thank you, Mr. President. Morrison, sound general quarters throughout the fleet. All ships are to prepare for immediate departure. The command center erupted into controlled chaos as officers rushed to their stations. Warning klaxons echoed through the massive space station that served as Earth's primary military headquarters. Throughout the Sol system, humanity's war fleet began to move. It was an impressive sight. Over the past 5 years, Earth had quietly built one of the most advanced military forces in known space. While other species had focused on exploration and trade, humans had done what they did best. They had prepared for war. The fleet consisted of 250 ships of various classes. At its heart were 12 massive dreadnought-class vessels, each one a kilometer long and bristling with weapons that human engineers had designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Surrounding them were 60 destroyer-class ships, fast and deadly, along with 150 smaller frigates and corvettes. But the real surprise was Earth's newest addition to the fleet, 6 ships that didn't appear on any official records. They were designated as deep space research vessels in all public documents, but Admiral Chen knew better. They were humanity's first true warships, designed not for defense but for the kind of warfare that other species preferred to pretend didn't exist. Admiral, the fleet reports ready for departure. All ships are standing by for jump coordinates. Chen nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Throughout the solar system, her voice reached every captain and crew member in the Earth Defense Fleet. This is Admiral Chen. Today, we answer a call for help from people who need us. Some of you may be wondering why we're risking our relationship with the Galactic Coalition for Strangers. I'll tell you why. Because it's what humans do. When someone needs help, we help them. When innocents are in danger, we protect them. That's not just our policy. It's who we are as a species. She paused, looking at the tactical display where the battle was continuing to rage at the edge of their solar system. The enemy we're facing is unknown, but our intelligence suggests they're technologically advanced and extremely hostile. They've shown no mercy to civilians, which means they'll show none to us. But they've made one critical mistake. They've chosen to threaten innocent people while humanity is watching. Throughout the fleet, crew members straightened at their stations. These men and women had trained their entire careers for a moment like this, though most had hoped it would never come. All ships, prepare for jump. Coordinates are being transmitted now. We jump in 30 seconds. The space around Earth's fleet began to shimmer as the faster-than-light drives powered up. These drives were based on coalition technology, but human engineers had made significant improvements. Where most species required several minutes to calculate safe jump coordinates, humans had reduced that time to mere seconds. 15 seconds to jump. Chen watched the countdown timer on her display, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. They were flying blind into a combat situation against an unknown enemy. It was the kind of scenario that military academies use to teach students about impossible situations. 5 seconds. But as she looked around the command center at the faces of her crew, Chen felt a familiar sensation. It was the same feeling she'd had during her first combat mission 25 years ago. Fear mixed with determination, uncertainty balanced by training, and underneath it all, an absolute conviction that they were doing the right thing. Jump! The universe twisted around them as space and time folded. For a brief moment that felt like eternity, the Earth Defense Fleet existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then reality snapped back into focus, and they were at the edge of the solar system. What they saw there made even experienced veterans gasp in shock. The coalition ship Harmony's edge was barely recognizable. Its once elegant hull was scarred and burning, with entire sections torn away by enemy fire. Escape pods drifted in space around it, some intact, others nothing more than debris fields. And surrounding the dying ship were the attackers. They were unlike anything in the coalition databases. The ships were organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to pulse and shift like living tissue. They moved with a predatory grace that made Chen's skin crawl. Most disturbing of all, they were systematically hunting down and destroying every escape pod they could find. "My God," whispered Morrison. "They're not just attacking the ship, they're murdering the survivors." One of the organic ships had cornered a group of escape pods near an asteroid. Chen watched in horror as it extended what looked like metallic tentacles and began crushing the small vessels one by one. Each time a pod was destroyed, sensors detected the brief energy signatures of the people inside as they died. "Admiral, the coalition ship is hailing us." "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that Chen recognized as a Zilanian. Captain Vextar was tall and thin, with the characteristic blue skin and large eyes of his species, but his usually calm demeanor was shattered. His uniform was torn and bloody, and behind him Chen could see the bridge of his ship in chaos. "Human vessels. Thank the ancestors you've come. We have been under attack for 6 hours. These creatures, they don't respond to any communication attempts. They simply destroy everything in their path." "Captain, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to help. Can you tell us anything about their capabilities?" "Their shields are incredibly strong, and their weapons tear through our defenses like they're made of paper. But Admiral, you must understand, we are not the primary concern here. We have escape pods scattered throughout this area, each carrying between 50 and 200 civilians. Most of our passengers are children evacuated from the border worlds." Chen's jaw tightened. "Understood, Captain. We'll do everything we can." "Admiral," Morrison interrupted urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting movement from the alien ships. They've noticed us." On the tactical display, the organic vessels were beginning to turn away from their pursuit of escape pods. Instead, they were moving toward Earth's fleet with unmistakable hostile intent. Chen activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We are facing an enemy that murders civilians for sport. They have shown that they understand only one language, violence. Today we're going to teach them that humanity speaks that language fluently." She paused, watching as her ships moved into battle formation with the precision that came from endless hours of training. "Rules of engagement are simple. Protect those escape pods at all costs. Show these creatures what happens when they threaten innocent people while Earth is watching. All ships, weapons free. Let's bring our people home." The first alien ship opened fire while they were still at extreme range. Beams of sickly green energy lanced across space, striking the shields of the lead human destroyer. The energy readings spiked off the charts as the alien weapon tore through the ship's defenses like they weren't even there. "Direct hit on the destroyer Wolverine," Morrison reported, his voice tight with concern. "Sir, that weapon just penetrated our shields like they didn't exist." Chen studied the energy readings with growing alarm. The alien weapon technology was unlike anything they had encountered. But even as she processed this disturbing information, her tactical mind was already working on solutions. "Morrison, transmit the following order to all ships. Full evasive maneuvers, maximum speed. Don't let them get a clean shot." Throughout the human fleet, ships began to move with an agility that surprised even their own crews. Human military doctrine emphasized speed and maneuverability over heavy armor, based on the simple principle that the best defense was not getting hit in the first place. The alien ships, apparently accustomed to slower, more heavily armored opponents, seemed confused by the sudden burst of movement. Their weapons, devastating as they were, couldn't track targets that moved with such unpredictable patterns. All ships close to engagement range, target their weapon systems first. The human fleet surged forward, weaving between asteroids and debris as they closed the distance. The aliens responded by intensifying their fire, but the humans were no longer where the aliens expected them to be. The first human weapons to fire were railguns, kinetic weapons that accelerated metal projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The technology was considered primitive by most galactic standards, since energy weapons were generally more efficient. But efficiency wasn't everything. The railgun projectiles struck the lead alien ship with devastating force. The kinetic energy tore through its organic hull, sending chunks of tissue-like material spinning into space. The alien vessel shuddered and began to list to one side. "Direct hit," Morrison reported with satisfaction. "Their hull appears to be organic in nature, and it doesn't handle kinetic impact well." More human ships opened fire, and the space around the aliens lit up with the brilliant flashes of railgun projectiles finding their targets. The organic ships were tough, but they weren't invulnerable. But the aliens were learning quickly. They began to spread out, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of the human fire. And when they returned fire, the results were devastating. The destroyer Wolverine took another direct hit and simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, fighting bravely alongside its sister ships. The next moment, there was nothing but an expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. "Wolverine destroyed," Morrison reported grimly. "No survivors." Chen watched the tactical display as more of her ships came under fire. The aliens were incredibly deadly, but they were also making a mistake. They were focusing their attack on the human warships while ignoring the real threat, because while the main fleet kept the aliens busy, smaller human ships were quietly moving through the battlefield, collecting escape pods and shepherding them to safety. It was a tactic that required perfect coordination and enormous courage from the rescue ship crews. "Admiral, the rescue operations are proceeding ahead of schedule. We've recovered 60% of the escape pods, and the aliens haven't seemed to notice." Chen nodded grimly. The plan was working, but at a terrible cost. Already she had lost 3 destroyers and a dozen smaller ships. The aliens were simply too powerful to engage directly. But then she remembered something. The 6 ships that weren't supposed to exist, the ones that were officially designated as research vessels. "Morrison, signal the research vessels. Tell them it's time to field test their new equipment." The young officer looked confused. "Sir, the research vessels aren't armed. They're scientific ships." Chen allowed herself a thin smile. "Lieutenant, you have a lot to learn about how humanity prepares for war." At the edge of the battle, 6 ships that looked unremarkable began to power up systems that didn't officially exist. These were humanity's secret weapons, ships equipped with technology that Earth's best scientists had been developing in absolute secrecy for the past 3 years. The first alien ship to approach one of the research vessels discovered too late that appearances could be deceiving. What looked like a harmless scientific vessel suddenly erupted with weapons fire unlike anything seen before in galactic warfare. Particle beams that could punch through any known armor, gravity weapons that could crush a ship's hull like an empty can, and most terrifying of all, nano-weapon systems that could literally disassemble an enemy vessel at the molecular level. The alien ship didn't just die, it simply ceased to exist as a coherent structure, breaking apart into its component atoms. What in the name of the ancestors was that? Captain Vextar's voice came over the communication channel, filled with shock and something that might have been fear. Chen activated her personal communication system. "Captain, I suggest you don't ask questions about things you don't want to know the answers to." The battle was turning. The aliens, faced with weapons they had never encountered before, began to fall back. Their organic ships, so deadly against conventional forces, were helpless against humanity's secret arsenal. But just as victory seemed within reach, something changed. The remaining alien ships suddenly stopped retreating. Instead, they began to pulse with a different kind of energy, something that made every sensor on every human ship scream warnings about dangerous radiation levels. "Admiral," Morrison's voice was tight with alarm, "they're powering up something big. Energy readings are off the charts." On the tactical display, the alien ships were beginning to glow with an ominous light. Whatever they were preparing, it was going to be devastating. Chen realized with growing horror that they had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed the aliens were giving everything they had from the beginning. But like any intelligent species, these creatures had been holding something in reserve. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern. Get away from those alien vessels now." But even as she gave the order, Chen knew it was too late. The aliens had waited until the human fleet was committed to close-range combat before revealing their true capabilities. The space around the alien ships began to tear apart. The fabric of space itself began to ripple and tear around the alien vessels. Admiral Chen watched in growing horror as reality seemed to bend and twist in ways that made her eyes water and her mind struggle to process what she was seeing. "Morrison, what the hell are those readings telling us?" The young officer's hands flew across his console, but the numbers that appeared made no sense. "Admiral, they're somehow manipulating space-time directly. The energy requirements for this should be impossible." Through the main view screen, they could see the effect spreading outward from the alien ships like a wave of distorted reality. Where it touched human vessels, terrible things began to happen. Ships didn't just explode, they seemed to fold in on themselves, their hulls twisting into impossible geometric shapes before disappearing entirely. The destroyer Yorktown was caught in the edge of the effect. Chen watched helplessly as the massive warship began to stretch and compress simultaneously, its structure becoming something that existed in too many dimensions at once. The crew's final transmission was cut short in a burst of static that somehow sounded like screaming. "All ships, full retreat, emergency jump, now!" But the space-time distortion was expanding faster than the human ships could escape. 3 more destroyers vanished into the twisted reality, their crews lost in dimensions that human science couldn't even name. "Admiral, the research vessels are requesting permission to deploy countermeasures." Chen gripped her command chair as the flagship shuddered under the effects of the expanding anomaly. "What kind of countermeasures?" "They're not saying, sir. Just that they need immediate authorization to activate experimental defense systems." The wave of distorted space-time was less than 30 seconds away from reaching the flagship. Around them, reality was becoming fluid, with colors that didn't exist and sounds that came from directions that weren't there. "Authorized. Whatever they've got, use it now." At the edge of the battle, the 6 research vessels suddenly changed. Their unremarkable hulls split open like flowers blooming, revealing internal structures that hurt to look at directly. These weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were mobile weapons platforms designed around technology that pushed the very limits of human understanding. "Activating theoretical physics countermeasures," came a calm voice over the fleet communications system. "All ships, prepare for reality stabilization." What happened next would be classified at the highest levels for decades to come. The research vessels began to emit a frequency that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was a sound that could be heard with the eyes and seen with the ears, a harmonic resonance that reached into the fundamental structure of the universe itself. The expanding wave of alien space-time manipulation suddenly stopped. More than that, It began to collapse back on itself as the human countermeasures took effect. Reality reasserted itself with an almost audible snap, and the twisted geometry of warped space returned to normal. But the effect on the alien ships was devastating. Creatures that had evolved to manipulate space-time found themselves suddenly cut off from their most powerful abilities. Their organic vessels, no longer supported by their dimensional manipulation, began to buckle and collapse under their own weight. "Impossible," came Captain Vextar's voice over the communication channel. "How did humans develop countermeasures for dimensional warfare? Such technology should take thousands of years to perfect." Chen activated her personal communicator, her voice grim. "Captain, you'd be amazed what humans can accomplish when we're properly motivated." The truth was more complex than she was willing to admit. Earth scientists had been studying theoretical physics for decades, driven by a simple human trait: curiosity about how things worked. When faster-than-light travel had been achieved, that same curiosity had led them to explore the deeper implications of manipulating space-time. Most species developed FTL travel and stopped there, content with the practical applications. Humans had looked at the technology and immediately started wondering what else they could do with it. The results of that wondering were now scattered throughout the human fleet in the form of weapons that officially didn't exist. All ships, resume attack pattern. These things are vulnerable now. The human fleet surged forward again, but this time the battle was different. The alien ships, cut off from their dimensional abilities, were forced to fight with conventional weapons and tactics. And in that arena, humanity had been preparing for war far longer than anyone realized. The organic vessels were fast, and their energy weapons were devastating, but they moved in predictable patterns that suggested they were accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior technology rather than superior tactics. Human ships, trained for warfare against opponents who might be technologically superior, adapted quickly. "Deploy drone swarms," Chen ordered. From the human ships came clouds of small, fast-moving objects that swarmed toward the alien vessels like angry insects. Each drone was equipped with a small but powerful explosive device, and their targeting systems were designed to exploit weaknesses in enemy armor. The aliens tried to shoot down the drones, but there were thousands of them, and they moved with the kind of erratic patterns that human programmers had learned from studying actual insect behavior. For every drone destroyed, 3 more made it through to their targets. The explosions that followed weren't particularly powerful by the standards of ship-to-ship combat, but they didn't need to be. The drones were targeting specific weak points: sensor clusters, weapon mounts, and what appeared to be organic nervous system nodes on the alien hulls. Blinded and partially disarmed, the alien ships began to struggle. Their formation broke apart as individual vessels tried to defend themselves, abandoning the coordinated tactics that had made them so dangerous. "Morrison, signal the rescue ships. Resume pod recovery operations." "Aye, sir. Admiral, we're getting reports that several pods contain Coalition VIPs. Apparently, some high-ranking officials were among the refugees from the border worlds." Chen nodded grimly. Political implications aside, her primary concern remained the same: getting innocent people to safety. But she couldn't deny that successfully rescuing Coalition officials would go a long way toward explaining why Earth had deployed its entire fleet without permission. The battle continued for another 20 minutes, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Cut off from their dimensional manipulation abilities and facing an enemy that fought with tactics they had never encountered, the alien ships fell one by one. The last alien vessel tried to escape, its organic hull pulsing with what might have been panic. But human ships were faster, and more importantly, they were angry. The crew of that final alien ship had participated in the murder of thousands of innocent civilians. There would be no mercy. The final alien ship died under a concentrated barrage of railgun fire, its organic structure dissolving into component molecules that scattered into the vacuum of space. All alien vessels destroyed, Admiral. The immediate area is secure. Chen allowed herself a moment to breathe, but only a moment. The battle was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Morrison, what's our casualty report? The young officer consulted his console, his face grim. We lost 7 destroyers, 15 frigates, and 8 corvettes. Total crew losses are approximately 3,000 personnel. It was a devastating blow. Those were experienced crews, many of whom Chen had served with for years. But they had accomplished their mission. The refugee escape pods were safe, and the alien threat had been eliminated. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Coalition ship. Captain Vextar's image appeared on the main screen again, but his expression had changed dramatically. Where before there had been desperate gratitude, now there was something that looked like awe mixed with fear. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition and the 2 million refugees you have saved today, I offer our deepest gratitude. But I must ask, the weapons your ships employed, the countermeasures against dimensional manipulation, how long has Earth possessed such technology? Chen chose her words carefully. Captain, Earth has always believed in being prepared for unexpected threats. Admiral, with respect, what we witnessed today goes far beyond preparation. Your species has developed weapons systems that most Coalition members believed were purely theoretical. The implications... Captain? Chen interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. The implications are simple. Earth will always defend innocent life, regardless of species or political affiliation. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The Coalition captain was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, I believe there are going to be some very interesting discussions in the Coalition Council chambers in the coming days. Chen almost smiled at that. She could imagine the chaos that was about to erupt when news of this battle reached the galactic government. For 5 years, Earth had been treated as a junior partner, barely trusted with basic responsibilities. Now, suddenly, it would be clear that humanity possessed military capabilities that exceeded most Coalition members. Morrison, signal all ships. Prepare for escort duties. We're going to see the Harmony's Edge and all recovered escape pods safely to the nearest Coalition facility. Aye, sir. Admiral, where should we escort them? The nearest major Coalition base is Kepler Station, but it's 3 days away at standard cruise speed. Then we'll take 3 days. I want a full escort formation around the civilian vessels. And Morrison? Yes, sir. Make sure our research vessels stay close to the main formation. I have a feeling we're going to encounter some very curious Coalition officials when we reach Kepler Station, and I'd rather they didn't get too close a look at our experimental technology. The journey to Kepler Station took 4 days instead of 3. The Harmony's Edge was badly damaged and couldn't maintain high speeds, while many of the escape pods were running low on life support. Human engineering teams worked around the clock to keep everyone alive, sharing supplies and expertise with a generosity that surprised their Coalition guests. It was during this journey that Admiral Chen began to understand the true scope of what they had accomplished. The refugees weren't just random civilians. They were survivors from 3 different worlds that had been completely destroyed in the border wars. Scientists, artists, teachers, children, an entire culture that had been preserved only because of Earth's intervention. Dr. Zalara, an elderly Kepler scientist whose home world had been one of those destroyed, sought out Admiral Chen on the 2nd day of the journey. Admiral, I wanted to thank you personally, not just for saving our lives, but for the manner in which you did it. We have observed many species respond to distress calls over the years, and most calculate the risks carefully before deciding whether to help. You arrived 18 minutes after receiving our signal. That suggests your decision was made immediately. Chen nodded. Doctor, In human culture, we have a saying, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." When we received your distress call, doing nothing was never an option. Even though it meant risking war with unknown aliens? Even though it meant violating coalition protocols about fleet deployment? Doctor, those considerations never entered into the initial decision. We can worry about politics and protocols after we've saved the people who need saving. Dr. Zalara studied the human admiral for a long moment. You know, there are many species in the coalition who view humanity as primitive and aggressive. After today, I believe they are only half correct. Chen raised an eyebrow. Only half? You are indeed aggressive, Admiral. But there is nothing primitive about a species that can develop dimensional warfare countermeasures in the space of 5 years, or that can make life and death decisions with such clarity and speed. I believe the Coalition Council is going to need to reassess their opinions about humanity. When they finally reached Kepler Station, the reception was unlike anything Admiral Chen had ever experienced. The massive space station, home to over 50 million beings from dozens of different species, had turned out to welcome the refugees and their human rescuers. But it quickly became clear that not everyone was pleased with Earth's intervention. Admiral Thexvar, the Coalition military commander for the sector, met the human fleet with a formation of Coalition warships. His first communication was formal and cold. Admiral Chen, you are hereby ordered to heave to and prepare for inspection. By deploying your entire fleet without Coalition authorization, you have violated at least 6 different interstellar agreements. Chen activated her communication system, her voice equally formal. Admiral Thexvar, Earth vessels are currently engaged in humanitarian escort duties for Coalition refugees. We will comply with inspection requests after all civilian personnel have been safely transferred to station facilities. Admiral Chen, you will comply with my orders immediately. Your unauthorized deployment constitutes a potential act of aggression against Coalition space. It was exactly the kind of bureaucratic posturing that Chen had expected, but it still made her angry. They had saved 2 million lives and lost 3,000 of their own people in the process. And the Coalition's response was to threaten them with legal action. Admiral Thexvar, Chen replied, her voice dropping to a dangerous level. Earth vessels will continue our humanitarian mission. If you wish to interfere with the rescue of Coalition citizens, that is your prerogative. But I suggest you consider how that decision will be viewed by the refugees we're protecting. There was a long pause before Thexvar responded. Admiral Chen, maintain your current course, but understand that there will be consequences for your actions. The transfer of refugees to Kepler Station took 6 hours. During that time, news of the battle and rescue operation spread throughout Coalition space. Admiral Chen found herself fielding communications from Coalition officials, human diplomats, and news organizations from dozens of different worlds. But the most important conversation came from an unexpected source. Admiral Chen, this is Counselor Vatar of the Coalition High Council. I would like to speak with you privately. Chen accepted the secured communication link and found herself facing one of the most powerful beings in known space. Counselor Vatar was a Zelak, an ancient species known for their wisdom and political acumen. Admiral, I have reviewed the complete records of your engagement with the hostile forces. I must say, the capabilities your fleet displayed were impressive. Thank you, Counselor. We did what was necessary to protect innocent lives. Indeed. Admiral, I believe it is time for the Coalition Council to have some very frank discussions about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Your species has clearly been developing capabilities that extend far beyond what we previously understood. Chen chose her words carefully. Counselor, Earth has always been committed to defending freedom and protecting innocent life. Our capabilities have developed in service of those goals. Admiral, I'm going to be very direct with you. The hostile force you encountered, we believe they are scouts for a much larger threat. Intelligence suggests that what you faced today was merely a small advance force. The main enemy fleet may number in the thousands of ships. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Counselor, are you saying this attack was just the beginning? Admiral, I believe your species has just announced itself to a galaxy that is facing its greatest threat in recorded history. And based on what I've seen today, humanity may be exactly what we need to survive what's coming. The implications of those words hung in the air as Chen realized that Earth's involvement in galactic affairs was about to change dramatically. They had intervened to save innocent lives, but in doing so, they had revealed capabilities that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. 3 weeks after the rescue operation at Kepler Station, Admiral Chen stood in the Coalition Council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime. The massive circular chamber could hold representatives from over 300 species, and today it was packed to capacity. Every seat was filled, and additional delegates crowded the observation galleries. She had never felt more alone in her life. Admiral Chen, the council speaker began, his voice echoing throughout the chamber. You stand accused of multiple violations of coalition military protocols, unauthorized fleet deployment, engagement with unknown hostile forces without council approval, and possession of weapons systems that violate several interstellar treaties. Chen stood at attention in the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with suspicion, and more than a few with outright hostility. The coalition had not been pleased to discover that their newest member possessed military capabilities that exceeded most established powers. How do you answer these charges? Honorable Council, Chen replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Earth's actions were taken in response to a humanitarian crisis. 2 million innocent beings were about to be murdered, and we had the capability to prevent that tragedy. Admiral, interrupted Council Admiral Thexvar, your intentions may have been honorable, but your methods were illegal. Earth vessels were explicitly restricted to patrol duties within the Sol system. By deploying your entire fleet, you violated the military limitations placed on all new coalition members. Chen had expected this argument. Council Admiral, when human vessels received the distress call from the Harmony's edge, we were faced with a choice. We could follow coalition protocols and allow 2 million people to die, or we could violate those protocols and save them. We chose to save them. A murmur ran through the chamber at her blunt words. Several delegates began talking among themselves in languages that the universal translators struggled to process. Admiral Chen, the speaker continued, the concern is not just about your violation of protocols, but about the weapons systems your fleet employed. Our analysis of the battle records indicates that Earth possesses military technology that far exceeds what was declared during your admission to the coalition. This was the moment Chen had been dreading. The secret weapons programs that Earth had developed were about to become very public, and the political consequences could be devastating. Speaker, Earth's military development has always been focused on defensive capabilities. We have never sought to threaten any coalition member. Defensive capabilities? Admiral Thexvar stood up, his blue-scaled face flushed with anger. Admiral, your ships deployed dimensional manipulation countermeasures that most coalition members believed were purely theoretical. You possess weapons that can disassemble matter at the molecular level. How do you classify such capabilities as defensive? Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who would decide Earth's fate in the galactic community. Council Admiral, those capabilities exist because humanity learned a hard lesson long before we reached the stars. We learned that good intentions are not enough to protect innocent people. Sometimes you need the strength to back up your convictions. Admiral, came a new voice from the gallery. Perhaps you could explain to the Council how Earth developed such advanced technology in only 5 years of coalition membership. The speaker was Councillor Zendar, a representative from one of the coalition's most militarily powerful species. His tone suggested that he already knew the answer and didn't like it. Chen took a deep breath. Counselor, Earth's scientific community has always been driven by curiosity about how the universe works. When we achieved faster-than-light travel using coalition technology, our scientists immediately began exploring the theoretical implications. While other species were content to use FTL travel for transportation and communication, humans wanted to understand the deeper principles involved. And that curiosity led you to develop weapons of unprecedented power? That curiosity led us to develop capabilities that we hoped never to use. The weapon systems deployed during the rescue operation were theoretical prototypes that had never been tested in combat conditions. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Several delegates exchanged shocked looks as the implications of Chen's words sank in. Admiral, the speaker said slowly, are you saying that the weapons that destroyed an entire alien fleet were untested prototypes? Yes, Speaker. Humanity develops contingencies for threats that may never materialize. We prepare for possibilities that we hope will remain purely hypothetical. How many such contingencies has Earth developed? Councillor Zendar demanded. Chen hesitated. The honest answer would probably cause a panic that would shatter the coalition government. But she had committed to being truthful with the Council. Counselor, Earth's theoretical research programs have developed countermeasures for every known form of warfare, as well as several forms that are purely theoretical. We have contingency plans for everything from biological warfare to temporal manipulation to threats that exist in dimensions we can't properly perceive. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates began shouting in dozens of different languages. Several species representatives immediately began demanding emergency sessions to discuss the implications of Earth's revelations. Others called for immediate sanctions or even expulsion from the coalition. Order! The speaker called, his amplified voice echoing through the chamber. Order! Admiral Chen, the Council needs to understand something. Why should we trust a species that has been secretly developing weapons of such power? How do we know that Earth doesn't have aggressive intentions toward other coalition members? Chen had anticipated this question, and her answer came from years of studying human history and psychology. Speaker, the question isn't why you should trust humanity. The question is why we are revealing these capabilities to you now. If Earth had aggressive intentions toward the coalition, would we be standing here discussing our weapons openly? Would we have risked our entire fleet to save coalition refugees? Then why reveal them at all? Demanded Admiral Thexvar. Because, Chen replied, her voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. The enemy we encountered 3 weeks ago was not defeated. It was merely delayed. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence was filled with dread rather than shock. Admiral, the speaker said carefully, please explain. Chen activated her personal display device, and holographic images appeared above the chamber floor. They showed the alien ships from the battle, but also new intelligence that Earth's analysts had compiled in the weeks since. The hostile force we engaged was a scouting fleet. Our intelligence analysis suggests that these beings, we've designated them as the Devourers, are the advance force of something much larger. Based on the technology they displayed and the tactical patterns we observed, we estimate that the main Devourer fleet numbers in the tens of thousands of ships. The images shifted to show strategic projections of Devourer capabilities and estimated fleet strength. The numbers were staggering. Furthermore, our analysis indicates that the Devourers are not from this galaxy. The energy signatures we detected suggest they originate from outside local galactic space, which means they have been traveling for potentially thousands of years to reach coalition territory. Admiral, Councillor Vatar spoke for the first time during the session. What evidence do you have to support these conclusions? Chen had been hoping someone would ask that question. Counselor, during the battle, our ships captured several pieces of debris from destroyed Devourer vessels. Analysis of that debris has yielded disturbing results. The holographic display shifted to show microscopic images of the alien material. It looked more like biological tissue than mechanical components, but with structures that suggested artificial modification. The Devourer ships appear to be grown rather than built. The organic components show signs of genetic engineering on a scale that suggests a civilization that has been modifying life forms for millions of years. More importantly, we found this. The display zoomed in on a particular cellular structure that looked like nothing any coalition species had ever seen. It pulsed with its own internal light and seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal matter. This appears to be a biological quantum computer, a living organism that processes information using quantum mechanical effects. The computational power of such a system would be beyond anything we can currently imagine, and every Devourer ship contained millions of these structures. Dr. Zalara, the elderly Kepler scientist who had been rescued during the initial operation, stood up in the observer's gallery. "Admiral, if I may ask a question?" The speaker nodded permission, and Dr. Zalara continued. "Admiral, quantum biological computers of this sophistication would require millions of years to evolve, even with artificial guidance. Are you suggesting that the Devourers have been technologically advanced for geological time periods?" Chen nodded grimly. "Doctor, based on our analysis, the Devourer civilization is potentially millions of years old. They appear to have encountered and absorbed the technology of countless other species. The weapons we faced were not innovations. They were refinements of technologies perfected over eons." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several delegates looked physically ill as they contemplated facing an enemy that had been perfecting warfare for geological timescales. "Admiral," the speaker said quietly, "how long do we have before they arrive in force?" "Based on the energy signatures we detected in the wreckage, we estimate 18 months before the main Devourer fleet reaches Coalition space. Possibly less if they have faster ships that we haven't detected yet." Admiral Thexvar stood up again, his earlier hostility replaced by grim determination. "Admiral Chen, given these circumstances, what does Earth propose we do?" Chen had been preparing for this moment since the battle 3 weeks ago. "Admiral, Earth proposes a complete restructuring of coalition military doctrine. We need to pool our resources and knowledge to develop new defensive technologies. More importantly, we need to be prepared to fight a type of warfare that the coalition has never experienced." "What type of warfare?" demanded Counselor Zendar. "Total war," Chen replied simply. "The Devourers don't negotiate, they don't take prisoners, and they don't show mercy to civilians. They consume everything they encounter and move on to the next target. Defeating them will require every species in the coalition to contribute everything they have." "And Earth's role in this restructuring?" asked Counselor Vatar. Chen had been hoping for that question. "Earth is prepared to share all of our theoretical research and prototype technologies with coalition defense forces. We will provide technical specifications for our weapon systems, training for our tactical doctrines, and assistance in developing new countermeasures against Devourer capabilities." "In exchange for?" prompted the speaker. "In exchange for the authority to prepare the coalition for total war. Earth requests emergency military powers to coordinate defense preparations across all coalition territories." The chamber erupted again as delegates realized what Chen was proposing. She was asking for humanity to be placed in command of the entire coalition military apparatus. "Admiral," Admiral Thexvar said once order was restored, "you're asking us to trust a species that has been secretly developing weapons of mass destruction for years. How do we know you won't use these emergency powers against coalition members?" Chen looked directly at the coalition military commander. "Admiral, you don't. You have to decide whether you trust humanity's intentions based on our actions rather than our capabilities. We have revealed our weapons voluntarily, we have shared our intelligence freely, and we have already sacrificed thousands of our own people to save coalition refugees. At some point, trust becomes a choice rather than a calculation. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Species representatives argued about the implications of human weapons technology, the reliability of intelligence about the devourer threat, and the wisdom of granting emergency powers to newcomers to galactic civilization. But in the end, the decision came down to a simple question posed by Dr. Zalara during the public comment period. Honored delegates, we are faced with two choices. We can continue to debate protocols and worry about hypothetical threats from humanity while a very real threat approaches our borders. Or we can trust the species that saved 2 million of our people without being asked and prepare to defend everything we hold dear. She paused, looking around the chamber at delegates who would determine the fate of galactic civilization. I was there when human ships arrived to answer our distress call. I watched them sacrifice their own vessels to protect escape pods full of children they had never met. I saw them share their food and medical supplies with refugees from worlds they had never heard of. If we cannot trust a species that demonstrates such values through actions rather than words, then perhaps we don't deserve to survive what's coming. When the vote was finally called, the result was closer than Chen had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. By a margin of 68%, the Coalition Council granted Earth emergency military authority to prepare for the Devourer invasion. Admiral Chen found herself appointed Supreme Military Coordinator for Coalition Defense Forces, with authority over every warship and military installation in Coalition space. It was a responsibility that no single being had ever held in galactic history. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Counselor Vatar approached her. Admiral Chen, you now have what you asked for. But understand that if you betray the trust the Council has placed in you, the consequences will be severe. Chen nodded. Counselor, I understand the responsibility, but I want you to understand something as well. When the Devourers arrive, they won't care about our political differences or species rivalries. They will see us all as food to be consumed. Our only chance of survival is to work together like we've never worked together before. Admiral, there are many species in the Coalition who still view humanity as aggressive primitives. How do you plan to overcome that prejudice? Chen allowed herself a small smile. Counselor, we're going to teach them to fight like humans. By the time the Devourers arrive, every Coalition ship will be crewed by beings who think like warriors, act like tacticians, and fight like they have nothing left to lose. And if that's not enough? Chen's smile faded. Then we'll discover whether human stubbornness is strong enough to overcome an enemy that's been conquering galaxies since before most of our species evolved. But I can promise you one thing, Counselor. When the Devourers arrive, they're going to learn that this galaxy has teeth. Over the following months, the Coalition underwent the most dramatic military transformation in its history. Human tactical doctrines were adapted for dozens of different species. Earth's theoretical weapons research was distributed to every major Coalition world. Most importantly, the entire philosophical approach to warfare was revolutionized. Where Coalition forces had previously relied on defensive strategies and negotiated settlements, they now prepared for the kind of total warfare that humanity had been contemplating for generations. Ships were redesigned for maximum offensive capability. Crews were trained to think like predators rather than peacekeepers. When the Devourer fleet finally arrived at the edge of Coalition space, they faced something they had never encountered before in millions of years of conquest. They faced an enemy that had learned to think like humans, fight like humans, and refuse to surrender like humans. The war that followed would last for 3 years and reshape galactic civilization forever. But that is a story for another day. What mattered was that when innocent beings called for help, humanity had answered. And in answering, they had given the galaxy something it had never possessed before: hope.